Will the Committee on Executive Matters and Legal Affairs please come to order? It's 1:01 p.m. I'd like to welcome committee members Cordero, Kiaina, Okimoto, Say, Tulba, Tupola, Waters, and Wire. Everyone's here. Before we start a meeting, I have some procedural announcements to make pursuant to Section 92-3.7 about your revised statutes. This meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who registered to testify remotely. Before testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. For remote testifiers, when your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. For those who are joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. All registered testifiers will be called upon first. Then I'll give persons who have not registered an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Please utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called upon. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes to remote meetings to be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, if any objections are noted, I'll call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you'll be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described in the posted agenda. As a note, items numbers 8 and 9 on page 5 of the agenda have been canceled and will not be considered at this meeting. We'll take them up next month. And as a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. The first item, members, is Resolution 24-78, which provides for the acquisition of access easements for public use to the Kalawao Pearl Ridge Bus Transit Center and Mobility Hub located at Waimalu, Ewa, Oahu, Hawaii, and determining and declaring the necessity of the acquisition by eminent domain. I believe we have with us Aaron Sakamoto from the Department of Design and Construction.
Good afternoon, Chair Dos Santos-Tam, Vice Chair Cordero, Council members. Aaron Sakamoto with the Department of Design and Construction. We've submitted for your review a resolution requesting the acquisition of access easements for the Kalawao Bus and Transit Center and Mobility Hub. And we're asking for your support and approval for these easements. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, members, any questions? Councilmember Cordero, whose district this lies in?
Thank you very much. Yes, the request for the easement and the Kalawao Bus Transit Center and Mobility Hub is in my council district, and so I do have a few questions. First off, would you be able to explain a little bit about how large the easements are and what they would entail to be the use of the easements for?
Yes, Council Member, thank you for the question. There are 2 access easements that allow Kapolei-bound buses to enter the mobility hub at the Kalawao Transit Center. So the Kapolei-bound buses along Kamehameha Highway will be able to turn into Kanuku Street and then proceed through the property into the mobility hub. The access easements are roughly 13,000 square feet, slightly under 13,000 square feet each. There are two access easements.
Okay, thank you. So for the different access easements, are they under one landowner? And how have the discussions been with the landowner currently?
Yes, the access easements are through a single property owner. It's commonly called a Best Buy property, if you're familiar with that. And we've met with the property owner. We've been in discussion with them as far as the design. However, in the making the offer, presentation of the offer, they have not responded to our offer, either by mail, email, or any phone contact. So we're at an impasse right now.
Okay, so were these communications dealing with negotiations with the landowner? Or?
And then once the design was finalized, we presented an offer for the easements, and they have not responded to the offer at all.
And was there a deadline for response? And does this resolution kind of just force the hand of the acquisition?
Yeah, well, since they haven't responded, we cannot proceed any further with the acquisition. So the next step would be to get the approval of the council for this potential acquisition by eminent domain.
Okay, I am aware. I know that the city has spoken to the landowner prior, and so I think that they are willing to have the discussion. And so I was wondering, if they haven't responded, and if we are going to go through eminent domain, is there a sense of urgency for this resolution to go through?
Yes, there is a sense of urgency, and I have representatives of the Department of Transportation Service, DTS, available that can speak to that urgency.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we are proceeding with the.
If you could identify yourself and then answer.
Sure. Peter Garino for Department of Transportation Services. We're proceeding with the construction, going out to bid hopefully this fall. We're just awaiting obligation of federal funds for the project, which should happen this summer after we complete the federally required environmental review. So once that's done, we'll be on our way to getting it out to bid for construction.
Thank you. And since you're up here, I was just wondering, because we're talking about the Best Buy property, but the landowner also includes the property, has ownership over the property that's Mackay of the Pearl Harbor Bike Path too as well, right?
Right, correct.
And so how will that affect the properties and businesses Mackay of the Pearl Harbor Bike Path?
We're not planning any construction on the bike path or that area itself. It will just, the project will improve the quality of life in that region in general, but there's no construction going on Mackay of the bike path.
Okay. And with your experience in having any conversations with the landowner, the sole landowner in that area, and with their lack of response with the offer, would you be willing to have further negotiations with the landowner, just a little bit more time?
I'll turn that over to the Department of Design and Construction to.
Thank you, Council Member, for the question. Yeah, we've made every effort, multiple offers, written offers, emails, phone. We've been in contact with the attorney for the property owner. They requested some information. We provided them all the information that they asked for, and they have not responded to us at all as far as the offer. So we do not know what the issue is. We've recently had contact with one of the attorneys, and when they got notice of this resolution before the council, and they indicated that they would not, they prefer not to go through condemnation, what steps would be necessary. And we said, we need to know where they stand. And
Right.
It's been over a month and they still haven't gotten back to us. So with the impending construction, we don't want to hold that up any further because it jeopardizes all the contracts that DTS will be undertaking.
I understand that. As a council member for the district, I've had the opportunity to meet with them, as well as hold conversations with them online as well. So I was wondering if we could just be allotted the opportunity to assist DDC and DTS with these possible communications, if that's possible, because if we do pass this resolution, the negotiations or reaching out will stop, right? Or will it still continue?
The negotiations will still continue, but it will be through the Corporation Council. So there's still opportunities to negotiate at that point, but it'll be handled by the Department of Corporation Council.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have a question in relation to, if this moves forward and eminent domain occurs and, work on the transit center starts to build up, what is the city going to do to secure the property? Because, we've had a few fires there recently with also a person found there as well as, and just to keep the city's assets and properties I guess, safe?
Council President, we have a maintenance staff on site. DTS maintenance staff, our rail landscaping maintenance staff is on site. So their trucks are there, their offices are there, and that is, they will keep the property secure.
Okay, thank you. I had a question again. I don't think it was answered. It was, when was the deadline to respond to the offer? I know it was a few weeks or a month or so that you haven't heard back.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. We've actually sent 3 letters of offer, written letters of offer, and each letter has a 2-week response time. So our initial letter of offer was in September of last year, September of 2023. We sent a follow-up letter in December of 2023, and then in January of this year, January of 2024, we sent a 3rd offer letter with no response other than the attorney asking for additional information, which we provided. And at that point, we've been trying to contact them and they have not responded to our offer. So like I said, we're at an impasse right now.
Okay, will the department be willing to allow me or my team to assist you for just at least a month or so, or this week?
Sure, Councilmember. We'll take that assistance if.
Okay, we'll connect with you, Mr. Sakamoto.
Thank you.
Chair, if possible, and I don't know if this is the best way to go through it, either we defer it, or if we move it forward, then I would possibly ask the chair to allow, the chair of the council to allow for more time to connect the Department of Design and Construction and DTS to the land company that has ownership over that area. And if we do move it, then we can possibly proceed with the resolution in the council, or schedule it for another further council meeting. So those are my possible my suggestions for the committee.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see if there's any further questions from other members. Chair Waters, and then Councilmember Wire.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hey, I'm just curious. You're asking us to exercise eminent domain for an easement. Why is it only for the easement rather than just taking the entire property?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. The decision was made, I believe, by the Department of Transportation Services that the access easements would suffice. And I guess in preliminary discussions with the property owner, there were questions as far as if we were to take the entire parcel or something more than the access easement, they would be against that. I believe that's what the justification was for just taking the access easements.
Okay, so if this were to go through, the property stays with the landowner, the city would just be allowed to traverse the property through the easement, sounds like, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So actually, one of the access easements does overlap an existing easement where Kanuku Street extends into the property. It's the additional access easement that follows along parallels the highway and the bike path. That's the additional access easement that we're also asking for. So the impact is slightly different between the 2 easements.
Okay, and then lastly, is easement cheaper than actual condemning the property itself? Is that part of the plan? Or do you think it's going to cost the same amount?
Thank you for the question. Taking an access easement may be less. It depends on the what's actually being taken. If we're to take the entire parking lot that Best Buy uses between Kanuku Street and where the bus transit center is going to be located, the cost could be significantly higher if we were to take that parcel.
Okay. Based on the previous line of questioning, sounds like the landowner is willing to negotiate with the help of the council. Have you gotten any indication from them that they simply did not want the city to be using this property?
We haven't had any indication, speaking from DDC, from Design and Construction, we haven't had any indication that they're against the project. Like I said, we met with them and we discussed the entire project when we initially approached them. This is speaking from DDC.
Was the sticking point the dollar amount, do you think?
Excuse me, I didn't hear the question. Could you
Was
repeat
the
that?
sticking point the price?
We don't have any indication if it's the project, if they're against the project, or if it's just the price. This is from a DDC standpoint.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. That way, if TTS has anything other to offer, that'd be helpful.
Councilperson, we have received no indication from the property owner that they are against the project either at TTS.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Wire.
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my first up is my question relating to how much room it will take up. So the operations that are currently both in the Harbor Center area as well as the Best Buy area, there's no disruption to operations, yeah?
The two access easements, like I said, if one access easement will follow where the Kanuku Street extension is, it overlaps an existing access easement. The additional access easement that parallels Kamehameha Highway and the bike path will impact the parking lot on that side of the property. It'll impact 17 parking stalls. The Department of Transportation Services, as part of the plan, acquisition plan, will reconfigure the parking lot to make up for those lost stalls.
Okay, that's good to know. So it'll take up 17 stalls and they'll get those 17 stalls back after, yeah?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, last call for questions. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Aaron. At this time, we'll proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers or anyone who would like to testify? Okay, I see Angela Melody Young. Angela, please proceed.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES, a grassroots movement in strong support. So the resolution is to request the acquisition of property for the Kalau Pro Ridge Bus Transit Center and Mobility Hub, and the site features an electric bus charging station. And the property is safely situated next to the Best Buy Pearl Harbor bike path. And I'm looking at the project team that worked on this, which was the Department of Transportation Services, Complete the Streets Division, and also G70, the architecture company and civil engineer that worked on this. And I'd like to be supportive of the work because I ride the bus almost every day, and I'm concerned about the environmental concerns.
Okay, thank you, members. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Clerks, is there anyone else here in the chamber who'd like to testify?
There's no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers or anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
No one has logged on.
Okay. Members, we are in discussion. I heard from Councilmember Cordero two options. One is moving this forward, and if more time is needed, taking that time before it goes before full council to be scheduled, or we can defer it here at this committee and take it up at a later date. Councilmember Cordero, do you have a preference between the two options?
Sure. Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to ask my questions for my district and my Malukai. But I would like to move it forward. You know, I was grateful that Mr. Sakamoto was able to share all the different dates that has been communicated. We will commit to really making sure that they connect this week. And but yeah, I would like to move it forward, and then we can see how the timing will go.
Okay, members, any further discussion? Okay. There being no further discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-78 be reported out to be laid over and published, and thereafter adopted at a subsequent council meeting. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. We'll move on now to agenda item number 2. This is Resolution 24-83, terminating inactive council advisory committees. Members, a proposed posted CD1 was submitted by myself. This makes a tiny amendment to a reference to the clause that created the Agricultural Development Task Force back in 2004, and that proposed amendment was posted on the addendum. Members, do we have anyone from the administration to testify? I don't see anyone, and no one's listed. So do we have anyone who would like to testify? Okay, Angela Melody Young. And then anyone else can come up to the mic after her.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying in neither support nor opposition, just wishing to comment. So basically, this resolution repeals or cancels something that was implemented by law, and per this resolution, which doesn't have the strength of a law, it was just a request, a formal request to work together in a few work groups or focus groups assigned to specific special tasks and responsibilities. And so the focus groups are similar organizations working towards common goals. And the Agriculture Development Task Force of 2019, I think, is a study of critical agriculture and rural development issues, and then also Domestic Violence Response Task Force of 2015, as the UnitedNations.org defines domestic abuse. I think this is very important to the community, is a pattern of behavior in which one seeks to create an abusive, frightening, or terrorizing, manipulative behavior pattern to injure someone. And sorry, that was an accident. And then,
Could summarize?
yes,
Yeah.
I think it's very important, especially also the Kakako Public Infrastructure Facilities Working Group, that if it is being repealed and then the common goals that they were working towards, that it was accomplished, then that's good.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? I'll note that she does bring up something important, which is items created by resolution, according to the charter, have to be repealed by resolution if we choose to do so, which she alluded to. So other testifiers on this measure? If you could press the button on the right side and then proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We are respectfully requesting, and we're only testifying on the Agriculture Development Task Force, and we're requesting that it not be terminated. In fact, it be reactivated. The last meeting, I believe, was in 2019. According to the first minutes in 2005, priority focus of the task force is to recommend areas where city policy may support ag development to include, but not limited to, reviewing the land use ordinance regarding zoning in agriculture areas and the necessary changes in zoning to reflect changes in ag practices, addressing gentleman farming from a land use perspective by restricting these uses in ag areas, reevaluating requirements for roads and utilities within agriculture zone areas and examining the agriculture tax rate, and finally developing incentives to benefit and enhance the agriculture history. The first meeting, January 2005, dealt with agricultural theft. Second meeting, February 2005, ag tax law. Third, the LUO, that was March, and the fourth in 2005 was specific to IAL. And the final two meetings in 2018, 2019 focus on IAL, issues that we're still dealing with, as in the Bill 64 with the land use ordinance. Just really quickly, Chair, if I have the indulgence, some of the members on the task force had extensive ag background. They were stalwarts of our industry. Yuki Kitagawa, former chair of DOA. Jimmy Nakatani, former chair of DOA, former ADC director and Farm Bureau president. Dean Okimoto, Lala Farms. Hawaii Ag Foundation chair, Dr. Cal Lam, former state veterinarian and animal health division administrator. Kapu Smith, senior land manager at Kamehameha Schools. Wayne Gasuara, still at Milena Ag Park. Alan Takimoto, and Fred Humphrey, and Waimanalo farmer. So we did have experience. They did advise the council. They did work with the administration, working with the ag liaison at that time. So we asked the council to keep this task force, which we believe can be beneficial, can provide input to the council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Councilmember Tupola?
Aloha, Mr. Miyamoto, thank you for being here. Real quick question, thank you for the background on each of the meetings. To your knowledge, the, I guess, disbanding or termination of continuous meetings or continual meetings up till today was what? Was it just we lost membership? Was it because there was no meeting that was convened? Did their terms expire?
Thank you, Council Member. I don't recall. Again, I had to go back and saw that was 2019. I actually thought it was before that. I think they met, as you can see, early on every month. I'm not sure if because of the new ag liaison where they maybe thought that that was a route to go, but the ag liaison was through the mayor's office where this particular task force was for the council. So I can't say. I do know that we participate. I do know IAL seemed to dominate towards the end of the task force. We just believe that it would be beneficial, we believe, to the council to have ag industry experts advising again, as an advisory role. I can't tell you exactly why that happened. It may have been a quorum issue, but now, especially with Zoom and that technology, again, a lot of times task force and boards have trouble convening or meeting quorum. I think now we have that opportunity with virtual meetings to be able to convene.
Two small follow-up questions. So there was an agricultural liaison to the mayor, and this task force advised that person to kind of work with the mayor? How did all of that work?
The task force was specific to the council. The ag liaison was under the mayor, so they collaborated. Again, Dr. Po Young Lai was the last liaison, so there was an ability to, the liaison was under the mayor's office, Office of Economic Development, where the task force, my understanding, was the advisory task force to the council. So now there is no ag liaison, but there are ag positions under Office of Economic Revitalization. So the task force, again, would work in conjunction and collaboration with the administration. But again, the task force was specific, to my understanding, as an advisory council or group to the council.
Thank you. Thank you for the background. Thank you, Chair, for the time.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kiana.
Thank you. Good to see you, and I'm glad you were able to make it. I had a question, and thank you for the explanation of the original resolution establishing it, and then the other resolution, Resolution 04-288, which delineated new objectives. My question is, do you believe that the objectives are sufficient for today's times, or do you think that we should amend it to kind of rethink about other purposes?
Thank you, Council Member. Other purposes, and I believe that was discussed at the first meeting. Again, agriculture is ever changing, ever evolving.
Absolutely.
What I don't see here, which is top of mind now in agriculture, is invasive species. Ag theft is still prevalent. Land use ordinance, land use issues will never go away, but invasive species, new technologies in agriculture. So agriculture is evolving. So again, with the makeup of the task force, it can help advise on these evolving issues and challenges that agriculture faces. So yes, it should be updated.
Thank you so much. And during the discussions, I know I have some recommendations to the chair and other colleagues. And as you know, with regard to Bill 64, 2023, we are just finishing public, institutional, and civic uses, and the biggie, of course, is agriculture. And I'm anticipating that in a couple of months, it would be nice to have this advisory committee up and running, so that in addition to the dire need for all hands on deck with regard to invasive species, I would welcome their guidance to the council on all of the hard work you've already laid with Ulupono Initiative on your recommendations for Bill 64. So again, thank you for showing up today.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Say.
Hey, Brian, nice to see you. Yeah, my question is, most of these task force, are they initiated by the administration or the city council?
Thank you, Councilmember Say, and great to see you, Councilmember. This one specifically, my understanding was initiated by the council. Again, as an advisory group to the council, and as Councilmember Ki'aina suggested, I believe if the task force was active, it was in place but active, it could have helped, I think, a benefit to the council to give some objective information and data so that the council can make a decision-making based on what we believe the council would point as ag experts.
Okay, my next question would be, where would the commission be cited? Meaning, what attached department or agency would this commission be attached to? Let's talk about all three of them that you see, just not ag.
I would have to look back, but I thought it was out of the chair's office or purview. I'm not sure. I would have to look back, council member.
Well, that's the reason why I pose these questions, Mr. Miyamoto, because I apologize that I did not even know about these commissions after 3.5 years. And, you know, if we knew that these commissions were in place, maybe assigned to the chair's office, it's very difficult for all, you know, individuals who are freshmen or sophomores to know that these commissions were set up. Because I was telling Chair Waters the fact that, yeah, ag should be considered to be reinstituted. And more importantly, I would say to myself that let's talk to the big landowners in regards to ag lands that are fallow in anticipation of the wildfires. Other than that, okay, thank you for having this discussion, Chair.
May I respond, Chair?
Yes.
Councilmember, 100%. And the ag industry needs, for this task force, we need to take responsibility of being inactive. I wasn't a member, but we do know the members. And it is disappointing that we have not convened in a number of years. COVID notwithstanding, we still could have done it virtually. So we are here asking the council to allow us to continue and to serve in an advisory role to the council.
Would this, can I just ask one final question? Would this resolution then mandate that the commission comes before the council every year, all these commissions, just to do a report?
I don't know if this particular resolution, but that is a policy decision. I would believe that this task force would present itself before the council as an advisory group upon request from the council. So if it's a periodic, if it's providing input at certain council meetings, absolutely, I think that's a policy call from the council.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick follow-up, Brian. You mentioned that 2019 was the last time that you had met. What are the plans? Should this continue and not be absolved at this time with this resolution? What are the plans moving forward? Are you having thoughts of when you would be reconvening and when you could come back to us? I mean, you may have shared that, but I'm trying to understand the timeline for your goals.
I believe at this point, the members that were in 2019 are probably still the members, so we'd first engage with those members, figure out what the protocol and where we would convene. I believe we did convene here. I recall going before the task force and testifying before the task force as the Farm Bureau. So it would be looking at the final minutes, where they were, what was going on, and again, working with the council, because this is a purview of the council, and then start scheduling meetings at what interval. Are they quarterly, are they monthly? And again, it would be completely under the purview of the council, because this task force is an advisory task force to the council.
Thank you. So prior, again, to 2019 was the last time. I mean, we're not sure. We're assuming that those people are still in place. Is that what the presumption is? We don't actually know the status of it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, any other questions for the testifier? Okay, if not, we will. Okay, if not, we will go to anyone else in the chamber wanting to testify on this measure. Okay, if not, we'll ask the clerks if there's anyone registered or standing by remotely to testify on this measure.
There is no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then we'll go into discussion. Vice Chair Kia-Aina, and then Chair Waters. Yep.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for actually doing the homework to look at some of these advisory committees which may be outdated, because it gives us all an opportunity to further discuss it, including the Hawaii Farm Bureau. So as you probably saw in the testimonies, the East Oahu County Farm Bureau, which represents farmers and supporters of agriculture from Waimanalo to Kahuku, also opposed the repeal. And so my recommendation is that I would respectfully ask that a verbal amendment strike any provisions in this resolution relating to the task force. I would like to work with the Farm Bureau to see if we could refreshen the underlying authority and mission, as we just discussed. And with regard to the administration, that could all be worked out in a hearing with all of the members consulting. But I do think I would not be relying on the current members, quite frankly. According to the resolution, it would be composed of 9 members, and each council district will propose a recommendation. And within a certain time frame, if you do not propose a nominee, it goes to the chair to get the commission stood up. So, but that would be my recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Chair Waters?
Thank you so much. Just following up on Councilmember Say's questions for Ag, the question I had was, what department was the Kaka'ako Public Infrastructure Facilities Working Group attached to, and what department was the Domestic Violence Task Force attached to? I'd imagine, my staff is telling me that Kaka'ako was actually the working group was actually in response to the roads in limbo. And is someone from DTS here to talk about that?
It doesn't look like we have anyone.
No? I mean, maybe someone from OCS if available. Is that issue resolved? Yeah? Due to legislation making the city responsible for all the roads? Okay. How about the Domestic Violence Task Force? Does anybody know what they were tasked to do? And what department it was assigned to? Doesn't seem like anybody's jumping up. Do you know, Chair, what that was?
No, I don't know what this was attached to, but I know that the 3 women council members at the time, council members Fukunaga, Kobayashi, and who was it? Pine, at the time were members, and they did submit what they called the final report of the group. So I'm assuming that they envisioned that their work, or at least the task that they had before them, was done at the time. That doesn't preclude us from having another working group or identifying other issues. And I think that was part of, why I wanted to bring this up for discussion, is that, did they finish their task? Are there new tasks? If not, we can mahalo them.
Okay. I did reach out to the former executive director of the Domestic Violence Clearinghouse today, but unfortunately she was unavailable to come down today. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or discussion? Okay. At this time, the chair would like to recommend, even though I submitted a proposed CD1 that would have made small amendments to the Agricultural Development Task Force, what I'd like to do is actually adopt Councilmember Kia-Aina's recommendation and amend the resolution by striking the second whereas clause, the third whereas clause, And then in all subsequent whereas clauses and the be it resolved clauses, taking out references to the Agricultural Development Task Force, so that the resolution only pertains to the Domestic Violence Response Task Force and the Kaka'ako Public Infrastructure and Facilities Working Group. And I'm looking over here at OCS to make sure that they understand. Okay. Members, does everyone understand that? So that's going to be my recommendation. And before I guess, complete the recommendation, I do appreciate Councilmember Kia'aina's willingness to bring this up, and I think it is wise to look at what potential issues a future Agriculture Development Task Force group could look at, because as was pointed out, there's so many of these new novel issues that agriculture faces on the island. Okay, so members, that being a recommendation to amend, again, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-83 be amended based on the amendments, I guess, articulated verbally. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Okay, hearing none, Resolution 24-83 is amended to the CD1 as discussed verbally. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-83 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations?
Objections, Chair.
Okay. Objections noted from Councilmember Wire. Does that trigger a roll call? Okay, roll call vote. I'm just going to go from left to right rather than in alpha order. Councilmember Tupola?
Aye.
Chair Waters?
Reservations.
Reservations, okay. Councilmember Say? Reservations. Councilmember Kia'aina?
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Wire?
No.
Councilmember Okimoto?
Aye.
Councilmember Tolba?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The ayes have it. And it is so ordered. Moving on to agenda item number 3. This is Resolution 24-101, initiating amendments to Article 3 and Article 16 of the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu, 1973 revised 2017 edition as amended. This is a council-initiated one by me to do some further housekeeping on these two sections. Is there anyone in the chamber who would like to testify on Resolution 24-101? We see Angela Melody Young.
Hello, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES, wishing to comment on the resolution as it relates to the reapportionment and district boundary amendments and redistricting of districts. So the appointment is made every few years. And so the purpose of the resolution initiates amendments to Article 3 and Article, I can't read that, XVI?
16.
16, yeah. Oh, okay. So the census and district boundaries are interrelated activity that affects representation. So in the process of Congress, reapportionment is a process of dividing seats in the House amongst the 50 states. And here in the city is a different process. And so things evolve with time. And just as there are new elections in government based on democracy, I think there should be new amendments to the articles as it relates to reapportionment and district boundary amendments and redistricting of districts.
Okay, thank you, members. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone else who'd like to testify here in the chamber? Clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers or anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
No one has logged on, Chair.
Okay. There being none, members, we are in discussion on this. Before we start discussion again, these are housekeeping items, and I know that Vice Chair Kia'aina, when we took up some of the other charter amendments, expressed a concern about having too many things on the ballot and confusing the voters. So I do want to be mindful of that, but I thought it was important that we at least raise some of these things because they do deal with reapportionment and other items that we as the city have to do from time to time. So members, any discussion on this resolution? Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. Yeah, definitely, when we took this up for the Reapportionment Commission, when we did this just recently, I think, there wasn't any huge issues with what had happened. There were small suggestions. Actually, none of them were these ones, but they had suggested some other things when they concluded. So I guess my question would be whether or not this has to happen this year, because I believe it's 2030 is going to be the next reapportionment. So I don't really feel like it's super pressing, but I did look through the suggestions, and I think that they're minor, but at the same time, the question itself is a little bit obtuse, I think, for voters, especially when it refers to like Article 16 and then Article 3 is going to delete this. And I just honestly don't want us to be putting things out that are super hard for the public to understand. And then the ones that we really want people to understand, they kind of skip over because they're like, this is too much political jargon. But I do think that in subsequent years, as we approach the next reapportionment, that I could be wrong, but I think they had 4 specific suggestions when they finished. So were these taken from their suggestions or?
No, these were, we asked OCS to take a look at some of the charter provisions in these sections just to clean things up.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think it would be nice to kind of look through theirs because I do remember a couple of them being pretty reasonable. But at the time, we had just finished this and we were like, okay, we're not doing that right now. We'll wait until year 8 of the next 10 years. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further discussion? Vice Chair Kiaina.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for outlining my previous concerns about new questions to be put on the ballot. I had asked the Office of Council Services to just remind me on what we have so far. Of course, we have a question relating to the qualifications at the Department of Emergency Management, which Councilmember Wire shepherded. We, of course, are looking forward to the question on the creation of an Ocean Safety Commission. And inevitably, while we have a multitude of Salary Commission questions, I think we collectively know that we would want one because that is what the voters want. They want clarity on council member salaries moving forward. And there, of course, in addition to yours, is a moving vehicle relating to homelessness. So I think that all of these questions deserve to be heard, but at the end of the legislative process, I would likely have to oppose these measures just because I don't want to risk all of these other questions on the ballot. And I have to tell you, when I was not a council member and I would see 5 or more, I didn't know how to vote on them. And so my worry is for all the hard work that the lifeguards have put in, it would be a shame if the Ocean Commission was not successful, as well as clarity on the Salary Commission. And again, as I said, there already is going to be a question regarding to the Department of Emergency Management. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Waters.
Thank you. And thank you for taking on this task and OCS for their hard work. But I have to agree with Councilmember Kiaina. I think especially dealing with the way we're deciding how salaries are going to occur. This resolution says, upon adoption of this resolution by council and its approval by the mayor, the city clerk is directed to prepare the necessary ballots with the question contained in the resolution and with spaces for yes or no. But if I'm looking back at this, it looks like it creates at least either one large question dealing with all the amendments or possibly 6 separate questions. And just looking at on page 6 on the top, where the amendment would read, upon the successful reconsideration thereof by the council following mayoral disapproval, or upon the calendar day immediately following the expiration of the mayor's time to disapprove a bill in accordance with section 3-203. I'm thinking that the voter is going to read this and say, what the heck am I voting on? And again, this is the hard work of Office of Council Services, and I appreciate that, but when we're dealing with a lot of other charter amendments, this timing-wise, especially since the Charter Commission, we're going to set them up next year, that they could do a cleanup measure. But I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think this kind of tips my hand a little bit towards my recommendation if there's no further discussion. What I'd like to do, especially with this resolution, because it is a concurrent referral and would go to another committee, is what I'd like to do is get it out of EMLA, but without the expectation that it's heard at a future committee, just so we can make a statement to the future Charter Commission when that process comes up, as well as at a later point, if we find ourselves without questions, to put on the ballot to say, at least, in EMLA, they discussed it and said we can move something out. But I agree that we don't want to confuse the voters with dozens and dozens and dozens of questions, even if they're important housekeeping things. So for both, if there's no other discussion, Councilmember Say.
Yeah, thank you very much. My point this afternoon is something like this. If it's not broken, what are you trying to fix? Because this may give the perception that we're doing something that unintentionally we're benefiting ourselves. And I don't want to get caught in that particular scenario at this point in time. That's why I'm saying to you, it would have been nice if OCS could have given us a presentation of what the amendments are that you are improving upon it. If not, I'll probably vote no, because I'm just saying to myself, if it's not broken, what are we fixing? That's all. Okay. Thank you.
Members, further discussion. So what I was going to suggest is we get it out of EMLA here without sort of the expectation that it's heard later. And again, a future Charter Commission can pick up some of these things. But I put them on the agenda and introduce these resolutions so we could have sort of a discussion about what these things are that at some point ought to be cleaned up. So Chair's recommendation is that Resolution 24-101 be referred to and accepted by the Committee of Executive Management for further consideration pursuant to its consecutive referral. Any discussion, objections, or reservation? Oh, Councilmember Tupola.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So your recommendation is that it be heard in executive management and that we're voting yes to move it out of this committee?
To move it out of this committee. So it's effectively out of here, and the ball would be in the next court if the chair of executive management wants to hear it, but he's now under no obligation to do so. We can also hold it here. We could defer it here, but I'll leave it up to the members also. We can also hold it here. Chair Waters, yeah.
Well, I was going to vote no, but based on your recommendation, I was going to go with reservations, but I don't want to create the unrealistic expectation that it might be heard in executive management. So I'm not clear based on what Councilmember Tupola just asked.
No, understood.
Did you want me to hear it in executive management? No? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, I guess that's a consequence of the concurrent referral process. Well, in that case, I'm sort of hearing and sensing that there's not really a desire to move forward. So the chair would, if you allow me, I will recommend that action on this resolution be postponed to a time and date to be determined by the committee chair. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is fairly similar. This is Resolution 24-102, initiating miscellaneous amendments to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu in 1973. This deals primarily with boards and commissions and also deals with the director of DPP. Members, 2 proposed CD1s were posted and submitted by myself. For your information, the proposed amendments were posted on the agenda addendum. And we can take a look at those. I understand we have registered testimony from Ernie Lau from the Board of Water Supply. Everyone's favorite general manager and chief engineer.
Thank you, Chair. Ernie Lau, Board of Water Supply, and just another public servant. But thank you. We submitted testimony, which is actually, I think, for the first version of the CD1 that was dated 4/22. On the second version, which is 4/16, which deletes the proposed changes to the terms of office for the manager and chief engineer, the fire chief, and the executive director for HART. On that one, we actually support not taking an action to create terms of office. I'm here available for any questions. So our testimony is for the first version of the CD1, but on the second version, we support the change.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the chief engineer? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber who'd like to testify on resolution 24-102? Okay. Hearing none, clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers or anyone standing by remotely to testify?
There is no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay. There being none, members who are in discussion, to preface discussion, I submitted 2 different CD1s, and frankly, I would like to focus on the second one, which takes out the terms of offices for the various CEOs, managers, et cetera. I think it was an interesting discussion to have. We asked OCS to look at areas that we could conform and streamline. Some of the boards and commissions have term limits, others don't, and I'm sure there were historical reasons as to why. So we thought it was an interesting discussion to bring up, standardizing those at 5 years. But after discussions with the Board of Water Supply, HART, et cetera, those different autonomous agencies wanted to have some flexibility in addition to the other commissions that hire their executive director or CEO or equivalent. But members, any discussion on any version of this resolution? Chair Waters.
Thank you. Well, we're in discussion, but if I'm reading this correctly, I think all 3 versions say it mandates that the director of DPP, it sounds like, prepare rules and regulations relating to implementation, interpretation, and enforcement of the building code, the housing code, the grading, sediment control and erosion ordinances, the electrical code, the plumbing code, and the building energy conservation code or its successor code. So, one, I'm curious, obviously they have to prepare rules when we ask them to or require them in statute, but would this mandate it across the board? And are we giving up our legislative authority by mandating rulemaking on all of these various codes?
That is a great question and might be a good question for Corporation Counsel if they're available.
Wonderful.
Dwayne Pang, Deputy Corporation Counsel. The charter already has a general provision whereby agencies can adopt rules to govern and to regulate the ordinance that you guys adopt. So there is a general provision already there. I'm not sure the specific intent as to why picking out DPP as opposed to other agencies, because there already is a provision in the charter.
Okay, so what you're saying is the provision in the charter applies generally to every department whenever
Yes.
we pass ordinances,
Yes.
but okay. Is your reading the same as mine, as this is, well, obviously dealing with DPP when you're talking about these various codes?
They already have the authority and to head to if the ordinance is not specific enough, if the ordinance that you adopt is specific enough or needs additional interpretation, they will adopt rules. If it's very specific, then I don't think they need to adopt rules, but they already have that authority.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Corp Counsel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further discussion on these? And Chair Waters, that was a very excellent point that all versions of this contain this provision as it pertains to the DPP director.
Okay, I guess I have another question.
Yeah, Chair Waters,
Up for discussion. So dealing with the HART director, it says the executive director shall not serve beyond the expiration of a term unless appointed again by the board. Are you removing this part?
Yeah, so I'm proposing removing everything that deals with the various directors of departments. A lot of these other things are housekeeping items. We don't necessarily need to do them right now. It's just at some point we should probably go through the effort of cleaning up the charter.
Okay, I guess I'd make the same point as we did with 24-102. But again, thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you. Members, is there any further discussion? I think members at this point we've, similar to the previous resolution, I think we've pointed out things that can be proposed, things that can be dealt with either now or in the future, to the point that Vice Chair Kiaina has made, and I think quite articulately so. We don't want to flood the voters with tons of questions that are going to be confusing, especially when there's really important things. But I think it's important to have on record that we did discuss some of these things, and a future charter commission can bring this up, or a future council if we have sort of one omnibus housekeeping thing that we just say, vote yes, because they're all housekeeping. So to that point, if there's no further discussion, the chair is going to recommend that we defer this measure to a time and date to be determined by the committee chair. Any discussion, objections, or reservations with regard to this recommendation? Okay, hearing none. This brings us to our next item, which is Bill 8, Community Workforce Agreements. Members, we do have a posted proposed CD1 submitted by myself. This is based on the communication from the administration at the last time that we heard this measure. The summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda, and we have with us the Managing Director, Mike Formby.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Dos Santos Tam and Vice Chair Cordero and council members. Mike Formby, Managing Director. So I did note the CD1, and I appreciate that offered change. I do think the CD1 clarifies many of the issues that the departments had been struggling with on the interpretation of the Community Workforce Agreement. There's also another two things that we're going to be doing in addition to hopefully amending the agreement to be less subject to interpretation. We're also going to be drafting rules for the Community Workforce Agreement, administrative rules, and then we're going to be drafting a form that will include a project justification blank. So we want each department to justify in writing why they have applied the Community Workforce Agreement to a covered project. And I think that will help us going forward so that we'll have less ambiguity on the application of this law.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the Managing Director? Okay, Councilmember Tolba.
Thank you, Chair. Managing Director, I got several questions, okay? So how many projects were subject to CWA in FY23?
So I'd have to go back and get the number for you, Council Member, and I can. It's difficult because there's currently no way to aggregate CWA projects across departments.
Okay.
And that's one thing that we'll be doing with this new form, is it will allow us to do that and to track all the projects. There was a major project, but I believe there were also some projects that the Community Workforce Agreement form provisions were included in the procurements, but I'm not sure that the contractors actually implemented. But I'll get that number for you.
Thank you, sir. And how many CIP projects do you anticipate being subject to CWA in FY25 if this bill passes?
Well, my expectation would be that more projects would be subject to a Community Workforce Agreement in fiscal year 25 or following the amendment of the law. And the challenge in the past had been ambiguity, difference of interpretation. And I think you know that the departments have their own deputy corporation counsel. Some corporation counsel may oversee multiple departments, but where they had different corporation counsel, there were different interpretations. And the benefit of the proposed language in the CD1 is that this language actually came from corporation counsel by agreement with my office and the administration. So I think it will help us now in interpreting. So I would expect to see more community workforce agreement projects in the future.
Awesome. And then using the definition in the CD1, can you give me an example of a covered project and a project that is not covered?
I can do that.
Okay.
I'll just give you an example that I'm drawing upon from the past. And that is if we had a facility like I'm talking about Department of Environmental Services, a wastewater, say a digester that had a cap on it, large project, had a large cap on it, and that cap needed to be replaced. In the past, the question was whether or not replacing the cap on the digester would be a covered project or operations and maintenance, because the larger project is the digester itself. So some might have said that when you replace the cap, you're just maintaining the larger project and that is not a covered project. Whereas my interpretation would have been the more involved analysis under covered project, and that is it over $2 million? Yes, it would be over $2 million. Is it typically done by city workers? And the answer is no, it's not typically done by city workers. It's too big of a project for city workers. Third, does it come from the capital budget or does it come from the operating budget? Because that is pretty much a bright line test. We do not spend operating funds on capital projects, and we don't fund capital projects with operating funds typically. Sometimes we do. There's exceptions to that. But when you look at that example of a new cover to a digester, to me, that would be a covered project, whereas operation maintenance would be maintaining that by painting it, by oiling it, by removing rust, doing all those things that you have to do to keep it in its working form.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to the first question then. Thank you.
Yeah. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Say.
Yes, Managing Director, with this particular provision in our ordinance, has it added more costs to the projects that we are be talking about, present and future? Will community workforce agreements add an additional cost to a project in the future?
So council members Say, I'm really not in a position to answer that. And when I say answer that in a way that I feel is based upon my experience, I would tell you that the way the community workforce agreement provision is written, it doesn't appear to indicate that it would cost a different cost for a contractor that's bidding on the project. All contractors have to pay prevailing wages when they do city work. So I'm not aware that it would cost more to have a CWA provision versus not. But I'm not speaking from experience as a contractor.
Then my next question would be, do we need the $2 million cap that's reflected in the bill?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do we need a monetary cap?
In which, well, right now, covered project, if I read the paragraph correctly, any large-scale public works project, including police, fire, emergency, erosion, rockfall mitigation, road, stormwater, sewer, infrastructure, and public station projects in which there is a contract in excess of $2 million for the building, installation, erection, etc. All I'm saying, why did our predecessors come up with a $2 million? Why not leave it blank? This is all city bonds, and PLA is tied to all city and state financing.
So council member, I just offer that a $2 million bright line test for money is a very low cap for the city and county. When we do CIP projects, they're almost always over $2 million. So it's a low bar as a threshold test for a CWA. And I think below 2 million is where you do get into that gray area of sometimes we use operating funds to do things that could be funded by CIP, but because the dollar value is so low, we will use operating funds. So I don't know why the former council members decided on $2 million, but it doesn't strike me as something that doesn't need to be in there.
Members, any other questions for the Managing Director? I think maybe some of the testifiers can provide some insight into that number as well.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking of testifiers, we'll proceed with in-person testimony now. I see we have Nathaniel Kinney, who's registered to testify, followed by Jeff Alameda, and then Pane Metonga. And then if there's anyone else who'd like to testify on this, they can get in line behind Mr. Metonga.
Oh, okay. Nathaniel Kinney, Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. In support of the amendment, clarifying this language that I think is necessary and needed. I mean, this agreement was passed almost 4 years ago. This summer, actually, I think it'd be 4 years ago, and there's been very few projects that have actually been applied. The CWA has actually been applied to. As far as the $2 million number was concerned, when this was, the threshold was determined when we were looking at this bill, and in the initial passage, it was determined that roughly 70% of all projects in the Honolulu City and County were above 2 million. So we just felt that it was necessary at the time to make it the threshold at 2 million. Other project labor agreements or community workforce agreements, like the state project labor agreement, is actually have a lower threshold, so like 1.5. So again, 2 million is a nice round number.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Kinney? Okay, hearing none. Next testifier.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Jeff Alameda, Associated Builders and Contractors. We stand in strong opposition to the proposed CD1. ABC believes that construction contracts should be given to the most qualified, lowest price responsible bidders, regardless of union affiliation. CWAs require all construction workers to be represented by a union. It forces non-union contractors to increase their costs and to hire workers they have no experience with while laying off their employees. Recognizable Honolulu projects subject to CWAs have not shown cost efficiencies or timely completion. Furthermore, the decision-making process for imposing CWA requirements lacks transparency, leading to decreased public confidence in the procurement process. ABC opposes Bill 8 CD1. We ask that the administration involve all stakeholders, both unions and non-unions, in the decision-making process. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Councilmember Tolba?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Amida, what is the financial impact to a non-union worker who would have to pay union dues and fringe benefits if they accept work on a subject to a CWA?
The impact to a potential contractor, let's say I'm a contractor who has wonderful benefits for my employees. Number one, I may not be able to retain all of those employees on a job because of the requirement to also provide for union employees. Number two, I'm going to continue to be paying into my employees' 401ks. I want to take care of them. I want to keep them on the job working for me after this contract is over with. Meanwhile, I am still paying or directing that fringe benefits be paid towards the unions. We have found through our studies that this can increase the cost to a contractor roughly 34%.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Tupola.
Hi, good afternoon. So quick question, because there hasn't been a lot of CWAs and we don't know in the future, I mean, granted this passes, how has this affected the workers that you refer to, since there's still a lot of work to be done that isn't under this?
There's a lot of work to be done in Hawaii, as you all know, both in public projects and private projects. And contractors, both union and non-union, are really busy. Our concern is, as an employer, as a contractor, if my requirement is I cannot retain all of my employees, where are we going to bring those employees from? We're going to have to import workers and export their wages.
When you say you can't retain your employees, what do you mean?
There is a requirement under CWAs that a portion of employees working on a particular project come from the union.
Right.
All right, so if, let's say there's a project that requires 10 employees on the job. I cannot commit, and I'm a non-union open shop contractor. I cannot commit my 10 long-term employees to that project. I'm required to retain from the union halls at least four employees in that particular instance. What do I do with the other employees that don't have any work? Do I lay them off?
Yeah, I guess that was my question about work, because I feel like there's a lot of work to be had, and so I'm of the impression that there could be some work for CWA, and of course tons of work that's actually happening right now. So I think in general we just want guys to get on the line. We want people to be in good jobs so that they can support their families.
That's correct. We have, and I would direct you to a 2023 survey conducted by the CASA Foundation and others, that in the trades in Hawaii, we have a shortage of 58,000 construction workers. We don't have enough workers. So to prevent companies from participating in public works projects, to prevent our companies, both members and non-members, we represent non-union shops from giving their employees jobs, we think that's a great disservice. It also is a disservice to those smaller companies who are attempting to expand and grow their business. Many of these companies provide maintenance for the city, for public works. What's going to happen with them? Hawaii is made of small businesses. How can we help these small businesses? That's the intent. How can we help grow these small businesses into larger businesses so we can build a better Hawaii?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none.
Thank you.
We have our next testifier, Pane Mentonga III.
Aloha, Chair, members of the Council. Pane Mentonga III, Deputy Director for Operating Engineers, Local 3. You have a written testimony in support of Bill 8 CD1. I'd just like to add on some comments. CWAs have been done for hundreds of years, per projects, on different levels. I've had the opportunity to work with our research guys in the mainland here in Hawaii, and yeah, in regards to CWA and cost, this does not affect procurement. Procurement is the lowest bidder, automatic. There is no additional cost. It's not going to increase that cost. It's the lowest bid who wins, union or non-union. When you're going, when you're talking about wages, prevailing wage applies. So there is no impact to the workers. There's no increased costs. As for workforce issues, from operating engineers' perspective, we don't have a workforce issue. Is there a lot of work? Yes, there is a lot of work. As you know, contractors, they like to juggle projects. It's not, I do one project, then I go to the next project. They juggle multiple projects. We have a compliance department that monitors non-union jobs, and a lot of these contractors, they're doing multiple projects. So to say that, oh, I gotta lay off my guys because I'm only doing one project, that's one scenario, but that's not common. A lot of times you're just juggling different projects, moving guys here, moving a crew here, okay, we're gonna do this, then we move them here, so that the process continues. So you keep your guys working, because it's ineffective to just go one project to one project to one project. And so with that, I testify in support.
Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, thank you. We have another testifier. And then anyone else in the chamber who'd like to testify, please line up on the side.
There we go. Aloha, Chair, members of the committee. Emmanuel Ziwakalam here on behalf of the laborers, Local 368. Here to stand in support of this measure. I believe that the two counterparts that spoke before from the unions have said a majority of what I would say as well. But I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Okay. Members, any questions? Okay, hearing none, and I see Angela Melody Young lined up. Would you like to testify on this? Okay. Anyone else in the chamber? Okay, we'll move to remote testimony. Clerks, is there anyone registered to testify remotely or standing by remotely to testify?
There is no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, hearing none, members, we are in discussion. Is there any discussion on the underlying Bill 8 or the CD1? Councilmember Say.
Yeah, I have some major concerns, really. I don't mind if the capital improvement budget reflects capital improvement projects. Are we now venturing into the O&M side? That if I were to hire a private cleaning agency that has this particular community workforce agreement, would that small company be able to operate and maintain a city facility that we don't have the workers to do the job? So I bring this up because that's where I think indirectly we are moving towards something that we are seeing the unintended consequences. And that is the high cost of government operations, the high cost of capital improvement projects, whereby $1 today may be worth 75 cents in the next 2 to 3 years or 4 years. The buying power. Community workforce agreements may work in certain areas as far as projects of a building, a facility. My question would be, would this particular measure impact Calvin Say and a group of volunteers that are cleaning a stream bed, as an example, with concrete walls and flooring? I'm just bringing this example up because, you know, there's so many regulations that we can't even get into the streams today with volunteers. So I bring this up because I am concerned about how inflation will just be adding more and more to the general taxpayer, which will then squeeze all of us in regards to our real property taxes. That it's either going to be the assessments or the rates that will have to increase. And that's why I did ask the MD, why a threshold of 2 million? I think most operations and maintenance not facilities, but vendors or contractors may not get those particular city or state jobs for operations and maintenance. Everybody's crying out for more workers, and I wanted to publicly state for the record that if this particular measure will be contributing to the operational side, your general fund side, it's scary for me. And the reason why I say it's scary for me, Chair, is that we already have collective bargaining. We already have collective bargaining for our state and county employees. If you're going to extend this now to the private sector, the cost will just continue to grow. I have good, you know, I have brothers and sisters that are with the trades. I can see it, okay, for capital improvement projects. A case in point, across the street. I'm not going to question the administration in regards to the PLA for the stadium. But will you find a private developer to put up the financing to do it now? Not realizing that, you know, the cost will be horrendous compared to what these contractors or developers or investors may have. So I bring this up because it's just like we're going down a spiral that we're not in control of. And I think the general public should be made aware of the concerns that I have, because I just talked to Chair this morning prior to this meeting. You know, the press out there, I'm very disappointed with you. Last week, we got criticized. 12% increase. Not 12%, but a 6% to 12%. In the count, time and point count, I thought we were doing a fantastic job, Mr. Chair. And today, I thought we were catching up after 3.5 years in trying to address the 22,000 shortage of homes. And I'm proud to say that this council did a lot, close to 2,500. That's 10%. That I think the general public out there should realize. So we are trying our best, but if it's going to add more and more costs to what we are trying to do today, it's tough. We're not going to see the housing development occur now, and the The factors were true, high interest rates, but more importantly now for me and the people that I do represent, the future generations, insurance. You're not going to have homeowners insurance at a cost that they can figure it out in regards to the mortgage. That's why I just wanted to say my piece, and I'm sorry to my brothers and sisters who are in the trades, but if this is just O&M and a threshold of 2 million and above, it's just going to add more to the overall cost of running state government and county government. So thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other discussions? Councilmember Tupola?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm support, community workforce agreements is already in place, and we're just amending a portion of it. But I can say from a district where I have construction booming and houses coming up everywhere, that this doesn't actually apply to every single project that's coming up in my district. There's tons of projects that aren't CWA or PLA related, which public labor agreement is the state form of what we're doing here on the county level. So as far as I'm concerned, on a very realistic ground level view, I've seen how this is one of many options of what people can do when trying to construct or build. And we're actually just talking about projects that we're doing. This is not private projects. And I would say that this is not what's going to drive up the cost of housing. You know what's driving up the cost of housing is out-of-state lawyers suing different developers for things that are out of their control, which actually caused, in one of the biggest developments in my district, caused Fannie Mae and the VA to pull out from doing loans for local homeowners. So I would argue that this actually is going to be fine and that these amendments will be good, but that there are other things that we should be concerned about that really will drive up the cost of housing. So in support.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other discussion on this measure? Okay. That being the case, the chair recommends that Bill 8 be amended to the posted proposed CD1. Any discussion, objections, or reservations to amending this bill? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. The chair then recommends that Bill 8 CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any objections or reservations to passing it out on third reading? Okay, noting objections from Councilmember Say, that triggers a roll call vote. So what I'll do is, since I went from left to right before, I will go from right to left. Councilmember Tolba?
Reservations?
Councilmember Okimoto?
Reservations.
Councilmember Wire?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Kiaina?
Aye.
Councilmember Say? No. Councilmember Waters?
Aye.
Councilmember Tupola?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So the ayes have it, and it is so ordered for passage out on third reading. Members, we have two more bills. The next one is Bill 21 of 2024, CD1, which amends or repeals ordinances relating to the City and County of Honolulu's boards and commissions. We have with us Andy Sugg, Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Council members. The administration is in support of this. The Commission on Children and Youth has not met, I think, since 1970, and the Early Childhood Committee has been inactive for 20 years. As you know, we've just hired an Early Childhood Resource Coordinator, Jordana Ferreira, and she is spearheading all of our efforts along with DCS on that front.
Members, any questions for the Mayor's Chief of Staff? Councilmember Wire, then Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify to make sure I understood, so you're saying the administration supporting the elimination of both the
Correct.
Committee on Children and Youth and the Child Care Advisory Board?
Correct, Council Member, yes.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Of course, I want to mahalo Jordana. She was amazing in my community last week, especially with Director Krupke coming out. And so I'm looking forward, with the addition, the standing up of a program, we don't really need, should we need a board or commission to, I guess, complement the work that Jordana and whoever her team will be in the future? And if so needed, it doesn't prohibit us from looking at a new board or commission to support that, right?
Correct. I think what we'd like to do is give Jordana and her team a little time, and we're not opposed to looking at this in the future at all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I support this measure.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions for Chief of Staff? Okay. Hearing none, thank you. Stick around if there's any more questions. Clerks, is there anyone here in the chamber, anyone's registered to testify, or anyone in the chamber who'd like to testify? Okay, I see Angela Melody Young, and if there's anyone else, please line up. Angela, when you're ready, please proceed, and be sure to turn on the mic.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying, wishing to comment on behalf of CARES, a grassroots movement. So in this resolution, the council finds that the city's Child Care Advisory Board is not necessary because there is already an effective office and program with a purview focusing on child care advisory. And this office is from the state of Hawaii, the Executive Office on Early Learning. And so the LG implements initiatives from this office, such as building out classrooms, and yet this office does not focus on behavioral educational standards. So as a concerned member, I am worried that if you have an office focusing on facilities and building classrooms for early childhood, which office then focuses on the behavior and the curriculum development for the children in the classroom, because, for example, social emotional learning strategies in early childhood education development refers to the process of helping to get the children adjusted with emotions and life, and to help children with disturbances in early childhood development, and to create healthy responses. So those are two very different focuses, right? One is building out facilities in a classroom, what LG is doing, and then also the curriculum and development of behavior and classroom standards. So if you're going to repeal the Child Care Advisory Board, is there going to be a focus on the curriculum and the educational standards?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay. Hearing none, clerks, is there anyone registered remotely or standing by remotely to testify?
There is no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay. There being none, members, we are in discussion. I note Councilmember Wire had a hand-carried CD1. I don't know if you want to discuss that, or if the administration's position makes a
I'll
difference.
ask maybe Chief of Staff their position. I haven't seen any follow-up from Department Communication 105. Do you know if the administration sent any follow-up indicating their change in position why they're now against keeping the Child Care Advisory Board?
I think after discussion with Anton and Edward at the head of the department, and obviously Jordana's wishes, our position is that we'll give it a little more time, and then if we decide there's a need for a commission, we're not opposed to that in the future.
Okay, and how was that communicated to the council?
I'd have to get back to you on that, council member.
Because I might have missed it. I'm assuming there'd be a department comm, but if not, I think it would be helpful, because we do have this on the agenda, right, for Housing, Sustainability, and Health Committee, since DCS is under our committee.
We'll definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and withdraw our proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you. Floor Leader Cordero.
Thank you. In addition to that, has the city administration changed their position from the first time they testified about this resolution?
There was some confusion among us, but the position that I'm putting forth now is our position, yes.
Okay. No, you say the same position as you did in council, though. I just was wondering if there was any changes. That's all. I'm just wondering.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? So to beat a dead horse a little bit, so if it's needed in the future, the administration is not opposed to standing it back up in perhaps the same way or in a different way with maybe experts in certain fields, et cetera.
Correct, Chair, yes.
Great. And then when, I know Jordana is working very hard on this, as is Anton and Edward. Is there a timeline for when we might get a more robust childcare plan from all these folks?
That's a great question. I can get that to you. I have not seen that timeline yet, Chair, but I can absolutely reach out to Jordana later on and find out if there is a timeline.
Okay. Thank you. All right, members, any other questions, discussion on this point? Okay, hearing none. Thank you to the Chief of Staff. Members, the chair is going to recommend at this time that Bill 21, CD1, be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion on the recommendation to pass it out for third reading? I do recognize that we will be talking about this further in housing sustainability and health based on the 5-year review of all the boards and commissions. Is that right?
Possibly. I think we're going to reassess.
Okay.
Process.
Okay. So that's a recommendation. Floor Leader Cordero.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to recommend that you only stick to talking about items in your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Correct. Okay. In that case, the chair will reiterate. Recommendation is to pass it out on third reading. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Okay. Hearing none, so ordered. Last item on here is Bill 32 of 2024, which makes revisions to the city's non-discrimination policy applicable to employment and the provision of services. We have with us via Zoom Denise Sukayama from the Department of Human Resources. Please unmute and proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, Denise Sukayama, the city's Equal Opportunity Administrator, on behalf of the Department of Human Resources, asking to continue to urge that we make revisions to Article 11 to align the city's policy of non-discrimination in employment and the provision of services with current protections provided in both federal and state law. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any questions for the Department of Human Resources? Okay. Hearing none, thank you. And stick around if we do have any questions. Clerks, do we have any other registered testifiers here in person or on Zoom? I think we have one in person here. After Angela Melody Young, if there's anyone else who would like to testify here in the chamber, please line up. Angela, please proceed.
Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES and in support of the non-discrimination policy, which generally is a policy so that people are not denied rights based on factors such as race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. And it also includes treating everyone equally, regardless of disability, gender, and sexual orientation. And I think this will help to create better results in terms of quality of life in the city. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, and seeing no one else in the chamber, clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers or anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
There is no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there being none, members, we're in discussion. Any discussion on the revisions to the city's non-discrimination policy in Bill 32? Okay. Hearing none, the chair recommends that Bill 32 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Members, agenda items number 8, which is Matsusaka versus City, and number 9, Anduha versus City, have been canceled. And so there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. We will take a 5-minute break and come back for transportation. Thank you.